Welcome to another episode of Breaking the Line. I'm Samuel.
And I'm Charleton.
And as always, taking a deep dive into the arts of mime and choreography.
Is that what we're doing?
Sometimes. Sometimes we take a shallow dive into the arts of clownery.
Oh man, I can't wait till that actually becomes our April 1st podcast.
It is. What do we got from today?
All right, so today we have Job, which is...
I have a job. I had to get the joke out of the way right away, otherwise we're going to just use it the whole time.
So anyway, so the song is Job. It's actually, what is it? El Dorado.
Yep.
The music is El Dorado by Two Steps from...
Heck.
Purgatory.
Purgatory. 2 Steps from Purgatory.
So yeah, that's by 2 Steps from Hell. And what I think is really funny is this isn't even the first song we've done by 2 Steps from Hell.
Yeah, no, it's great music.
Because they do great music, so what can I say?
I mean, when you're looking for instrumental music that's super dramatic and not just movie like soundtrack, this is good stuff.
Yeah.
This one was originally choreographed by the drama team out in Pennsylvania, so thank you guys for letting us steal your choreography. Well, me particularly, because my team is the one that we are showing today. The earliest recording we have was 2013. It was choreographed sooner than that. I want to say 2011, 2012, but regardless. Or irregardless.
No, I knew you were going to say that. I was waiting for it.
It's a good song about the story of Job, and one of the harder ones. We'll get into the clarity of people actually understanding the story. But if you already know it's about the story of Job, it's a really cool song.
Yeah.
Ready?
Which we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it. Yep, so here we have Job in the middle and all of his pastures. We told Hannah originally to be a shepherd, but then she's like, but I want to sweep. And I'm like, sure, you can sweep. That was basically how that went.
So we got a shepherd and
a housemaid.
Which, I mean, it makes sense. I honestly never even questioned it, because it's oh yeah, that's...
Yeah, her servants.
He's got servants.
That's basically what we were trying to show. Servants on one side, family on the other side. I do love how this song utilizes the musical cues. That's something that I think Pennsylvania team does really well. That when it got really dramatic, Satan comes in. Props to Katie, who's playing Satan here, because she had literally just learned this that day of, if not the week before, because the other person got sick or whatever. So props to her for stepping in on this one.
Also, who's that handsome man playing God back there?
I don't know. But one thing I do love about the song is that it kind of freezes everything else so you can highlight the background. You're intentionally upstaging it.
That was something I noticed, which was pretty good.
Yeah, so here we're still in the early chapter of chapter 1 of Job, where the Lord allows Satan to take all his servants as well as his family and their kids. Good use of some mime technique being thrown in here before the destruction of the house.
Yeah, I've seen some variations of this song. Don't make it rock back and forth, but do a vibration on the beats.
Right, different techniques, whatever you got.
Yeah.
No, and I love, even in the staging of that, you can see God, who is sovereignly allowing this, the house, and Job worshiping. It's really cool. You get to see a lot at once.
Yep. And this is it's a staging thing too, because that's basically 3 layers on the stage.
It's
that
good,
are all
good layering.
Clearly distinguished, but also at the same time, you can tell they're concurrent.
Right. Even though there's a lot going on, it's kind of like we talked about a while ago, where it's a slow enough song that you can still look at all 3 things and not be disrupted with your eyes. So here we get into chapter 2 of Job, where Job gets his boils, wishes he was dying.
Mm-hmm. And of course, there's the classic, Job's wife was left alive because she was, that kind of woman.
Curse God and die. But Job remains faithful, and after losing all these 3 things, something I do love about the staging and the choreography here is Satan gets to play a role here, but we intentionally throw them behind God so that we have this interaction between God and Job, that even though Job is wondering where are you, Lord, God is still perfectly there and sovereign over all this. Again, really well placed with the music, the dream sequence as we call it. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to hit these cues because it's that's the first half of this beat, and they're gone.
Yeah, when I first watched this, because knowing it's the story of Job, I thought that these were the people on stage right there. I thought we were going to be
Job's
the friends, but then this is It's the dream sequences of the things that happened earlier.
Yep. Nope, we tried to show it with like this slow motion thing and they all coming back. That almost touch, gone. And then the stage gets cleared and it's just Job, and the only thing he does wrong is questioning God. So God sends the whirlwinds, hence the ribbons, and the floods.
And
this is like the best set piece.
Yeah, this
is the
section
set piece
right
of the
here
song.
is just really brilliant. And then here's my favorite part of the song right here.
Hands down. Well, hands up. Yeah.
It's such a good moment because, like, you know, the argument is that God is, you know, sovereign. And so, like, the fact that he's sovereign is being exemplified here, and he literally, like, makes the stars stop rotating.
But he also makes them spin again, and then the whole heavens and the earth worship him, and Job, without having an answer, chooses to worship him as well. And then Satan gets to point to you, the camera. What are you going to do about it? No, it's kind of fun. You talk about the fingerprints of different choreographers. Pennsylvania tends to have a lot of this appeal to the camera. So that it intentionally breaks that fourth wall in a way of saying, like, how are you going to respond to this?
Yeah, no, I've actually, it's funny you mentioned that for the drama team, because, like, I've seen several of their songs where, like, at the very end, Jesus specifically, when instead of doing like a big pose, he always does like a reach out to the audience.
The never-ending tuck.
And then poses, yeah.
The never-ending tuck, because it just never ends.
And it's a tuck. That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it starts with the tuck, but then intentionally never ends with a tuck. Just keeps going. Until the song breaks, and then you keep moving. Then you're done. All right, what are we going to talk about with the purpose and the message? What would you say is the purpose and message of this song?
You know what? Why don't you start?
But that breaks the bit. Like, we know who starts and how things go.
But do I have to? It's where is it written?
We actually have a paper, and
it's written over.
Yeah.
Anyway, so anyways.
But I would say the purpose of this song is to tell the story of Job. Like, there's other aspects within the theology, but I would more kind of lean towards the message of that. But when you're saying, like, where am I going to put this in my lineup and what am I going to tell from it? Like, a lot of it is you're going to tell the story of Job, and then whatever part of Job would apply to your presentation lineup, whoever's speaking will communicate that through speaking or demonstrate, particularly, I think, the sovereignty of God through the situation. So funny enough, this song has also been used as an opener because it's super attention grabbing and people want to know, like, what is going on here? And often the speaker would say something like, so we serve a God who's bigger than us and that we can't understand. Basically, like, leaning into, here's what he has told us through the gospel message, and trying to make it almost like a humbling thing of not pretending like we already know everything, but trying to get people to be open to the gospel through just recognizing that God's bigger than our understanding.
Yeah, no, that's good.
What would you say is the purpose and message of the song?
I guess I'll no, but like, I would say, yeah, the message definitely is the story of Job, and the story of Job inherently is a story about God's sovereignty and really how his relationship with humanity should be viewed in some respects.
Right.
And I would say its purpose, how it works in the song, or in a lineup rather, is like, I don't know, because it comes down to, which I'll get into in critiques, I'll just sort of slightly talk about it. People might not know what the song is about.
No.
And so that can cause a little bit of issues with where it should go in the lineup. Because, like, this fits several places. And let me just walk you through my thoughts. First of all, it is more of an upbeat song that is very attention grabbing. So yeah, it could totally go at the beginning. It is also more of a serious message. So I feel like it could go closer to the end, but maybe not at the end, like one of the application type songs. But then also, and this is what I would think is more interesting, if you do a chronological type presentation structure. So if you're actually going through, like, the stories of the Bible, you'd probably put it pretty close to the beginning because, you know, chronologically it takes place, you know, relatively close to the beginning of the Old Testament. And people say it most likely chronologically occurred somewhere between, like, Genesis and Exodus or something like that.
Right, around. I thought I'd heard something about Abraham's time period, but
yeah, something around Abraham's time period. He was either there. It was definitely pre-Moses, like
right.
one way or another. And so, like, chronologically, you put it somewhere, you know, after creation or whatever like that. And so it has a lot of function. And I think it, you know, that's really, it gets some points for creativity. It gets some points on style, definitely.
Yep. If you were to do this one for, like, a church group or a closed presentation like a VBS, and let's say the VBS story they wanted to talk about was Job, oh man, you got a song that's very narrowly focused on it. Sometimes we get a lot of songs that are super generic, and that's like creation to cross, and like you're gonna get just like a flyby. I think they say the 30,000 foot view of the Bible. Nope, this one's gonna go like really narrow and focus in on one spot. It only skips basically all the poetic section of Job and his friends dialoguing, but you tell me how you're gonna do like 39 chapters of poetry in Mime. Like, I'd love to see you try that one. But if you're gonna say what's the message of the book as a whole, yeah, you got the storyline there and really focusing in on God's sovereignty throughout. And I think that's a huge point in how we respond to the fact that Job never gets an answer, just other than, I am God of creation, who are you? Cool. So that would be that as I transition to like what's praiseworthy about the song. That's it. It's super focused. It hits on Bible story so well. Like, I wouldn't imagine another one coming around unless you wanted to throw in Job's friends somehow. But yeah. I like the fact that they didn't just unnecessarily follow it, but they would rather focus on like a dream sequence to highlight the fact of all that Job had lost.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely say that its strong suit is that it does Job in like a pretty understandable way. Mm-hmm. Like, for the most part, like, you probably wouldn't be able to understand it, but if you do understand it, you can watch and you can see. And there's a part of Mime that, it kind of gets overlooked as we're kind of critiquing songs and stuff like that. And that is the human emotion aspect of it really brings a lot of these biblical stories to life. Mm-hmm. Because when it comes to, like, you could read the story of Job, mm-hmm. and you can kind of generally get, yeah, he's suffering. He's having a bad time. Mm-hmm. His toast was burnt this morning. Like, it really doesn't feel good for Job. But when you actually watch them on stage and you see Job on his knees crying and suffering, you see the emotion on his face, mm-hmm. on his body, and you see God there standing sovereignly. Like, it hits mm-hmm. differently because, like, it gives life, like reality to what would otherwise be like a several 1,000-year-old story.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And even when I was playing the God character in this one, trying to demonstrate that, like, I'm not passive in this. I'm feeling with Job and knowing that I'm sovereign, but relating to him like a person, that I know that what he's going through, he doesn't understand, but I am going to lovingly not leave him alone for his own good. Yeah. Are there praiseworthy aspects? I love the, obviously we talked about the set piece of the creation aspect. The way it's done is beautifully, where you get the waters that are chaotic, followed by the stars that are all over the place, and then the freeze to demonstrate God's power over them.
Oh yeah, such a good moment.
Oh, and I mean, I don't know if the drama team was thinking this, but particularly that whole being God of the seas, which in the Old Testament has a lot of like chaos or dark imagery, the seas being a place that's not safe and dangerous, and then going to the stars, so it's like of everything down below and everything up above, and then sovereignly controlling them.
Yep. No, I think like praises just does everything real good.
Yep, fun techniques in there is demonstrated as well.
Oh yeah.
Satan like bringing up the boils to throw on Job. There's a lot of room for the people playing the parts to have a lot of fun in how they demonstrate these things. It's definitely a fun song to do.
Yep. And also, one thing that I do want to mention is, like, this has the potential to use a bunch of different props, mm-hmm. because of, like, you could say the background people being shepherds, you're not really sure what they are, or having a broom or whatever. You could have Job having money or whatever and losing it. So there's like a bunch of different things that could use it, but the only two props, I guess, that actually get used are the God cape and the Satan cape. The God sash.
God sash, yeah.
They're against...
We're a sash kind of team.
They're a sash team, not a cape team. But,
Well, Satan gets a cape, but that's different,
I guess.
There are ribbons in the background that are supposed to represent the God speaking out of the whirlwind. But in hindsight, it almost feels like an unnecessary prop because they just kind of spin and you're like, oh, what was that? Whereas if I think they mimed it and actually had a few more people doing wind, it would be maybe a cooler effect. I'd almost want to re-choreograph that part. But now we're into critiques. Because, yeah, that was one of the critiques I was going to give, is the ribbons. And instead of doing ribbons, having some form of, like, wind coming up before they become the water, I think would be a really cool way of staging it.
Yep. So, get the elephant out of the room. My biggest critique, you might not know what the heck is going on.
What, people don't know what the story of Job is, just inherently?
Yeah, so, like... And what I feel like is frustrating is that there's not really a whole lot you can do about that.
Right. Because it's super narrow and focused, you need a speaker that introduces that this is the story of Job who loses everything. And like you get the overview of the story so that they can portray that human emotion side.
Yeah.
Or they just already know what it is.
Yeah. And what's even funnier is, like, even if they do know what it is, it does feel like it needs a speaker to come out there, even if it's a Christian audience who knows the story of Job, to say this is the story of Job, just so that way it gets people focused, gets people in the right mindset to go, okay, this is Job, and these are things that happen.
Right. Yeah. I don't know what else there is to say other than that's just kind of the way it is. But that's the nature of more narrow focus songs, or when you're doing a story that already exists as opposed to a generic story that you're trying to show.
Yep. And I'd also like to know it's not a bad thing, because like it can be really frustrating to like try to approach it and go, well, what are we going to do then? Do we just throw this song out? No, it's actually a really good song.
Right. And it has a focus that I would want to use at places that it fits better than anything else. I don't want just a whole bunch of overview songs. We need some that are more specific, just knowing that you're going to need some explanation if you're going to choose to use it. And that's what it is.
Yep. So another thing that I would like to add is, I don't know if this is a critique per se, but it's just maybe more of me thinking, well, maybe there could be a second version or something with the dream sequence maybe being pulled out and instead being replaced with like Job's friends coming in to talk with them. Now, I feel like the dream sequence is better in some ways because it gives like the emotional feel. But the reason why I'm not so sure about it is because like that just happened like 60 seconds ago. Like to need a recap is a little bit weird, but it does kind of give like the more solid feel to it. So I don't know. There's just kind of an awkward balance.
Yeah, it's trying to stay with the storyline of focusing on God and Job, right? And trying to build up why it would be that Job would want to like question God and his faithfulness. So it's trying to focus on that. You might be able to throw in Job's friends as far as them questioning, because in the book of Job, they're the ones who poetically say, Job, you must have sinned, or you must have done something wrong. So there could be a sense in which Job's friends get introduced at that time and highlight, maybe point back to things. And then instead of Satan coming through to break it down, Job's friends pointing at him or saying like, that's what you did. And maybe they point at him, but then Satan is the one doing it. So you see this aspect of the conflict of, well, God is still good and Job didn't sin. So why are bad things still happening? Right. And seeing that tension, I think you could squeeze that in the choreography.
That's kind of the direction I think that I would personally like to go, because it goes more with the storyline, even though, you could say the storyline of Job is just like the first couple and the last chapter.
Right, the narrative sections. But then the friends are important there.
Right, exactly. And it feels like the friends who take up like, a third of the book or maybe half of the book.
39 chapters.
39?
Out of the 42 chapters, like 39 of them are in poetry.
Well, yeah, but
I guess
some of them are
okay, of half of that, half of them would be going back and forth between Job talking and the friends talking in the next chapter.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever number that is.
About half.
So you can say half. And then because we get Job, you could say accusing God, and then God responding.
Right, the ending.
At the ending. So that happens, but then not Job's friend. So that's just kind of a thing that I kind of wanted to throw out there.
Yeah. Theologically, anything you would say, it's one of the better songs that talks about God's sovereignty. Like, bad things happen to good people, shocker. But, and what we mean by good people. But the fact that it doesn't have to be through direct sin that bad things happen, that God allows things from his sovereign hand somehow.
Yep. And, whenever I was studying Job in depth, my teacher basically gave the summary: God is God and we are not.
Yeah,
that's Job in a nutshell.
Yeah, and it's fun watching on the Mime side the colorization. Calvin does a great job of showing everything's dandy, showing that he's a God worshiper, and then also that he's in grief and agony, but he still chooses to worship anyway. And then finally culminating in his like dream sequence of like, why did you let this happen, and questioning God to being humbled. Something we didn't mention, that when God is turning with the stars, that Job comes right underneath God's hand, just to be able to gaze at everything that's happening. There's some cool staging that gets to happen to highlight Job is the only thing not bowing towards God right now. And then he chooses to worship anyway, even though he doesn't understand, which I think is a really solid theological message of worshiping God even through the difficulties, because guess what? You're not God and you don't get an explanation all the time, especially if you're in the trial. You don't get an explanation until afterwards.
If at all. And it's totally up to God, and then we need to be
by his grace or not.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so let's rate it: clarity, difficulty, style. And I know you're gonna say clarity, it goes lower just because it's a story of Job. I get it. Yeah. But if you already know it's the story of Job, so with that primer, I feel like a really clear song all of a sudden and gets bumped up higher. But because of that beginning preface, I think I have to give it like a 4.
Okay,
and it's nothing to do with the
mime.
mime.
How about,
okay,
let's rewind a second. Let's detract your statement, your rating. Let's give it 2 ratings. Let's give it to an audience of people who don't know the story of Job and the audience of people who do know the story.
I think that's fair. So yeah, if you don't know the story, I'd still give it like a 3. I think it's low, but I think I would give it a 3 for people who don't know the story of Job.
Yep. Honestly, I was going to give it a 3 because like as much as like you may not understand that it's Job, and so there's a lot of theological implications that come along with the story of Job inherently, but watching it, you can kind of glean certain things that this is a man who worships God and bad things are happening to him and that he worships God at the end. So you kind of get that story. So regardless of the circumstances, like, okay, I guess I kind of get it. Now, it misses out on just so much nuance.
Yeah.
But it still does have some merit to it, to an audience that might not understand that this is the story of Job.
Nope, totally. But then what do you do for people who do know the song? What would you grade it?
So what's funny is it does get bumped up naturally. I would say like I'm kind of leaning between 7 and 8. And the reason for that is like if you know the story and you know that it's what's going on, you can kind of catch on to a lot of that nuance and be like, okay, so this is what's happening. And it gives like a little bit of, you could say, interpretation to what the meaning of Job is.
Right.
Even though you're just telling the story in mind. Because as you kind of have this, narrowed focus of this is the story of Job, you then understand, oh, this is because like all these things are happening. Yeah. But then it's because of God's sovereignty. Like that sticks out like a sore thumb in the third act of the song. Yep. Which is awesome.
Nope. So 7 or 8, where are you lying? Because I was going to give it an 8. Just for same reasons. The only reason I wouldn't give it higher in the clarity is there's a couple sections where the conversation really is between Satan and God, and just doing conversation in mime is really difficult.
It's pretty much just gestures for like a couple of seconds and you move on.
Right, and I feel like
the only, like, you can't exactly do like what you're exactly saying. It has to be more like we're talking and then we do something in response to the conversation and then you're by context guessing what they said.
Pretty much, yeah. So that'd be the biggest knocker on that side, and the fact that it doesn't have Job's friends in it. So like for you, somebody who already knows the story, it seemed confusing of, I guess we're doing something different. So that'd be why I'd give it an 8.
Yeah, I'm probably going to give it a 7.
Okay.
Just because like I would say it's partly due to the friends, partly due to some of the stuff that I said. So I'd mark it down a couple points. Now, not to say that it was a bad one, because hey, guess what? A song with no lyrics is always difficult.
Oh, yeah.
Those are just by default. Yes. They get extra points on the difficulty.
Having taught this song, the dream sequence was one of the things that we had to work over and over again. So it's funny in the difficulty here. The main characters have a lot of emotional work where it's some cues. Like God has some cues, like a conversation and obviously a little bit of the ending. But most of it is actually really simple in just focusing on Job and trying to show the audience that you still care for him. And so you can't, it's difficult in a different way where you just have to maintain the character. And similar with Job, there's a lot of freedom. You can just, do what you want as long as it fits the story arc of the song and the colorization. So for those, and maybe the wife, I'd give a lot of the emotional difficulty side of the song versus everyone else who has actual cues to hit. And yes, some characters, but it really is up to them hitting their cues. So I'm still going to give this one, probably an 8 on difficulty. I think it's up there for me, having taught it.
Once again, I was thinking a 7 or an 8. But like my reason for, kind of teetering there is on the one hand, it's like this song looks very complicated. Like it looks pretty crazy in all these moving parts. But actually, if you break it down to its fundamentals, it's actually not as crazy as you might expect. Now, once again, with it being instrumental song, it does get extra points.
Yep. A lot of cues that sound similar to each other.
Yep. And like the occurs about 7 billion times in the song. So,
yes. You have to know contextually where you're at.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you just like go somewhere random in the song and say, okay, we're starting from here, it'll take you like 10 seconds to be like, that's okay, here we are. And then so yeah, like there's a lot of confusing cues, a lot of things like that. But ultimately, not that difficult a technique, not that difficult of much of anything, except for I would say the like emotions of things and hitting cues. So I don't know. I'm saying like probably a 7. Cool. I'm going to lean toward a 7.
And then style. It has some of the best style points for me. No backflips, but that ending sequence particularly gives it a lot of credit. And the staging, as far as like the layers we talked about, there's not a lot of songs that have like 3 to 4 levels of like layers.
Yeah, most people cap at 2.
Yeah.
And this one goes to 3.
Yeah, and not just like, you know, front to back on the stage, but even left and right, where you got the family, and you got the servants and whatnot. So you got people staged out separately to kind of make their characters extra clear. So I'm honestly gonna give this like a 9 on style. It's up there.
Yeah. No, I was gonna give it I'm thinking a 9, yeah, because like for all the same reasons, it's got a lot of cool things that it does. It does break a lot of bounds on like choreography, and one of the things I want to point out with like the dream sequence is that it does a really weird thing in that it doesn't shape the stage correctly. I don't know how to say that. Where because it's got like one person on stage right, one person on downstage left, and one person on upstage left.
Yes,
so it's like in a triangle.
Yes, it is a triangle, and if you notice, Satan's doing like a loop around them in a particular pattern to make it all work. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, so the asymmetric aspect of it.
Exactly. So it's got like a bunch of things that it's just like, this isn't proper like staging or theater, but it's done so artfully that it looks really good.
Yep.
And that in a similar way to The Coming, I think we were talking about before, I would say that this is a type of song that I would also put in like the same vein as The Coming. Very artful, very cool. It breaks bounds in like theological storytelling ways. Maybe not for like general audiences as much, but what it does as a mime song, it gets heavy points for. And because of that, and also it being the story of Job, and like how many songs do we have? I think it's just this one.
So funny enough, part of the story of the song is convincing Tim, who's helping lead the choreography for the team, him like not being so sure, and the whole team being like, no, we can do this. And then him being like, oh, what would you do here? And then them like working it out. And it was almost like convincing Tim the whole time of like what they're going to do. And then they had it and they worked through the story. So props to the team who choreographed it.
Yeah, it's great. So speaking of the drama team.
Not planned, but not sponsored either.
Hashtag not sponsored.
All right. Down below, links for all the videos.
Raise the lights, guy.
All right. I'm Samuel.
Yeah, he is. And I'm Charleton.
Breaking the line.
It's okay.